Welcome, agents and dreamers alike, to a journey through the classified corridors and hidden histories of the world's most secretive organization. Tonight, we'll explore the complete chronicle of S.H.I.E.L.D., from its wartime origins as the strategic scientific reserve to its modern incarnation as humanity's shield against the impossible. Let your mind drift as we walk through decades of covert operations, technological marvels, and the dedicated individuals who stood as sentinels between our world and the shadows that threaten it. There's no rush here. Simply allow the story to unfold, like a classified file, one secret at a time. In the winter of 1940, as German bombers darkened the skies over London and Nazi forces swept across Europe with terrifying efficiency, Allied intelligence services began encountering reports that defied conventional military understanding. Wehrmacht divisions were equipped with weapons that seemed decades ahead of anything in the Allied arsenal, powered by energy sources that scientists could not identify or replicate. These weren't merely advanced conventional weapons, but technologies that appeared to violate the known laws of physics, creating effects that bordered on the supernatural. The source of these impossible weapons was soon traced to an autonomous division within Heinrich Himmler's Schutzstaffel, an organization that called itself Hydra. Unlike other Nazi military units, Hydra operated with unusual independence, pursuing research programs that even other SS officers found disturbing and incomprehensible. Their scientists delved into areas that mainstream German research had abandoned as too dangerous or too theoretical, exploring the intersection between advanced physics and what could only be described as the occult. Hydra's emergence as a significant threat came to Allied attention through a series of devastating defeats that conventional military analysis could not explain. Entire battalions would be found frozen solid in the middle of summer campaigns, their equipment showing signs of exposure to temperatures that should not have been achievable through any known technology. Other units would report encounters with Hydra forces that seemed to appear and disappear at will, leaving behind only strange energy residues that defied scientific analysis. The traditional response to enemy technological superiority had always been to develop countermeasures through conventional research and development programs. But Hydra's capabilities seemed to exist outside the boundaries of normal scientific understanding. Standard military intelligence gathering proved inadequate when dealing with weapons that operated according to principles that Allied scientists insisted were impossible, yet which produced undeniably real and devastating effects on the battlefield. In response to this unprecedented threat, the Allied High Command made the decision to establish the Strategic Scientific Reserve, a joint intelligence and research organization tasked with investigating and countering Hydra's supernatural capabilities. The SSR was conceived as something entirely new in the history of warfare, an organization that would operate at the intersection of science, intelligence, and what military planners euphemistically referred to as unconventional phenomena. The man chosen to lead this extraordinary organization was Colonel Chester Phillips, a career military officer whose reputation for pragmatic thinking and unflappable demeanor had been forged through decades of service in conventional conflicts. Phillips had initially been skeptical of reports about Hydra's supernatural capabilities, dismissing them as the products of battlefield stress and propaganda. However, his pragmatic nature eventually forced him to acknowledge that conventional approaches were proving inadequate against an enemy that seemed to operate according to different rules entirely. Phillips brought to the SSR a military structure and discipline that would prove essential as the organization grappled with threats that challenged the fundamental assumptions of warfare and human understanding. His insistence on rigorous documentation and systematic analysis helped transform what might have been a collection of occult investigators into a professional intelligence service capable of operating in the shadows while maintaining the highest standards of military efficiency. Working alongside Phillips was Agent Margaret Carter, a British intelligence officer whose combination of analytical brilliance and operational courage had already distinguished her within the ranks of the Special Operations Executive. Carter's background in both conventional espionage and the kind of irregular warfare that was becoming increasingly important in the fight against Nazi Germany made her uniquely qualified to help develop the SSR's operational protocols and training programs. Carter understood that fighting Hydra would require agents who could maintain their professional effectiveness even when confronted with phenomena that challenged their understanding of reality itself. Her training programs emphasized mental flexibility and emotional resilience, preparing SSR operatives to function effectively, even in situations that conventional military training could never have anticipated. The psychological preparation of agents became as important as their physical training, as encounters with Hydra's supernatural weapons often left even experienced soldiers questioning their own sanity. The third key figure in the SSR's founding was Howard Stark, the brilliant industrialist and inventor whose technological innovations were already playing a crucial role in the Allied war effort. Stark's involvement brought not only his personal genius for engineering and invention, but also the resources of Stark Industries, one of the few private enterprises capable of supporting the kind of advanced research that would be necessary to understand and counter Hydra's capabilities. Stark approached the challenge of supernatural phenomena with the same methodical curiosity that had made him one of America's most successful inventors. Rather than dismissing Hydra's weapons as impossible, he treated them as engineering problems that simply required new approaches and unconventional thinking. His laboratories became the first facilities specifically designed to study and reverse engineer technologies that operated according to principles that mainstream science had not yet discovered. The relationship between these three founding figures established the organizational culture that would define the SSR throughout its existence. Phillips provided military discipline and strategic thinking. Carter contributed operational expertise and training protocols, while Stark supplied technological innovation and the scientific method. Together, they created an organization that could function as both an intelligence service and a research institution, capable of adapting to threats that conventional military organizations could not even comprehend. The SSR's headquarters was established in a series of converted facilities in New York and London, with smaller operational bases scattered across the Allied territories. These facilities were designed to accommodate both conventional intelligence operations and the specialized requirements of supernatural research, with laboratories equipped to handle potentially dangerous artifacts alongside traditional briefing rooms and communication centers. The challenge of recruiting personnel for the SSR proved as complex as any other aspect of the organization's development. Traditional military recruitment protocols were inadequate for identifying individuals who could function effectively when dealing with supernatural phenomena. The organization needed agents who combined conventional intelligence and military skills with the psychological flexibility to accept and adapt to situations that defied normal understanding. Carter developed recruitment criteria that emphasized intellectual curiosity, emotional stability, and what she termed adaptability quotient, the ability to maintain professional effectiveness when confronted with the impossible. Many potential recruits who excelled in conventional military or intelligence assessments proved unable to cope with the psychological demands of SSR operations, while others who seemed unlikely candidates demonstrated remarkable resilience when faced with supernatural challenges. The training programs established by the early SSR reflected the unique nature of the threats they were being organized to counter. Physical fitness and marksmanship remained important, but equal emphasis was placed on psychological preparation and what would later be called anomalous phenomenon response protocols. Agents learned to document and analyze encounters with supernatural forces using scientific methodology, maintaining detailed records that would prove invaluable for future operations and research. The SSR's early operations were largely defensive, focused on investigating Hydra activities and developing countermeasures for their supernatural weapons. These initial missions revealed the extent to which Hydra had integrated occult research with advanced technology, creating hybrid systems that combined the precision of German engineering with forces drawn from sources that Allied scientists were only beginning to understand. One of the most significant early discoveries was the existence of artifacts that seemed to contain or channel energies that could not be produced through any known technological process. These objects, which SSR researchers began classifying as 084 materials, appeared to be relics of some ancient civilization or technology far in advance of anything currently available to human science. Hydra's research programs were largely focused on weaponizing these artifacts, turning ancient powers into modern instruments of destruction. The implications of these discoveries extended far beyond the immediate military situation. If Hydra's weapons were based on technologies or forces that predated human civilization, then the war against Nazi Germany was taking place within a much larger context than anyone had previously understood. The SSR found itself grappling not only with an immediate military threat, but with questions about humanity's place in a universe that was apparently far more complex and dangerous than conventional science had suggested. Howard Stark's analysis of captured Hydra equipment revealed sophisticated engineering that incorporated principles unknown to Allied science. The power sources for these weapons seemed to draw energy from some external source that could not be identified or measured using conventional instruments. The weapons themselves were constructed using materials and manufacturing techniques that suggested access to industrial capabilities far beyond what Germany should have possessed, even accounting for their wartime technological advances. The psychological impact of these discoveries on SSR personnel was significant and had to be carefully managed to maintain operational effectiveness. Many agents reported experiencing what would later be recognized as symptoms of reality shock, a condition that developed when individuals were repeatedly exposed to phenomena that challenged their fundamental understanding of how the world operated. Carter's training programs were gradually expanded to include psychological support and counseling services designed to help agents process and adapt to these experiences. The SSR's relationship with other Allied intelligence services was complicated by the classified nature of their mission and the difficulty of explaining supernatural phenomena to officials who had not been exposed to them directly. Traditional intelligence sharing protocols proved inadequate when dealing with information that most recipients would dismiss as fantasy or propaganda. The organization developed specialized briefing procedures designed to gradually introduce conventional military and intelligence officials to the realities of supernatural warfare. As the war progressed, the SSR's understanding of Hydra's capabilities and objectives continued to evolve. What had initially appeared to be a collection of advanced weapons programs gradually revealed itself as a systematic attempt to harness forces that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional scientific understanding. Hydra's research was not simply aimed at developing better weapons, but at fundamentally altering the nature of warfare itself by introducing elements that conventional military doctrine could not address. The discovery of the Tesseract, a cube-shaped artifact of apparently infinite energy potential, marked a turning point in both the war against Hydra and the SSR's understanding of their mission. This single object contained more energy than had been produced by all of human civilization throughout history, yet it had been created by some unknown technology that seemed to operate according to principles that challenged the fundamental laws of physics as understood by contemporary science. Hydra's attempts to weaponize the Tesseract demonstrated the scope of the threat facing not just the Allied forces, but humanity itself. In the hands of an organization led by individuals like Johann Schmidt, who had already demonstrated their willingness to use supernatural forces for destructive purposes, such artifacts represented a threat that extended far beyond the current conflict. The SSR realized that their mission would not end with the defeat of Nazi Germany, but would continue as long as such dangerous artifacts existed and could potentially fall into the wrong hands. The capture and study of Hydra equipment and personnel provided insights into research programs that had been underway for decades, suggesting that Nazi interest in supernatural phenomena predated their political rise to power. German occult societies and research groups had been investigating these areas since the early 20th century, building a foundation of knowledge and expertise that had eventually been incorporated into Hydra's more systematic and militaristic approach. The SSR's counter-research programs, led by Howard Stark and a growing team of scientists and engineers, began developing technologies and techniques specifically designed to neutralize supernatural threats. These efforts produced some of the first examples of what would later become standard anomalous technology countermeasures, including containment systems for dangerous artifacts and weapons designed to disrupt supernatural energy patterns. The challenge of containing and studying dangerous supernatural artifacts led to the development of specialized facilities and protocols that would become the foundation for decades of future research. The SSR established secure storage and research sites capable of handling materials that posed risks not just to human health and safety, but to the fundamental stability of local reality. These facilities represented some of the most advanced examples of protective engineering ever attempted, incorporating both conventional security measures and protective systems designed to prevent supernatural phenomena from spreading beyond controlled environments. The human cost of the war against Hydra was significant, not just in terms of casualties, but in the psychological and emotional toll taken on agents who were required to function in an environment where the normal rules of reality could not be trusted. Many SSR operatives developed what would later be recognized as occupational hazards specific to supernatural warfare, including chronic anxiety about the reliability of their perceptions and difficulty maintaining normal relationships with individuals who had not been exposed to similar experiences. The SSR's medical and psychological support services evolved to address these unique challenges, developing treatment protocols for conditions that had never been documented in conventional military medicine. The organization's approach to agent welfare became a model for how institutions could maintain human resources when operating in environments that challenged the basic assumptions of human existence. As the Second World War drew toward its conclusion, the SSR found itself in the position of having developed capabilities and knowledge that would remain relevant long after the immediate threat of Hydra had been neutralized. The artifacts and technologies they had studied would continue to exist, and the potential for similar organizations to emerge and attempt to weaponize supernatural phenomena would persist as long as such forces remained accessible to human investigation. The decision to continue the SSR's mission beyond the end of the war reflected a recognition that the threats they had been organized to counter were not tied to any particular political movement or national government, but were inherent in the existence of supernatural phenomena in a world where human beings possessed the curiosity and ambition to investigate and potentially exploit them. The war against Hydra had revealed that the universe contained forces and technologies that could pose existential threats to human civilization, and defending against such threats would require permanent vigilance and institutional commitment. The transformation of the Strategic Scientific Reserve into what would eventually become the Strategic Homeland Intervention. Enforcement and Logistics Division represented both an evolution of mission scope and an acknowledgement that the organization's work would need to continue indefinitely. The threats they had been created to counter had not disappeared with the defeat of Nazi Germany, but had simply taken new forms and found new potential wielders. The shield that the SSR had raised to protect humanity from supernatural threats would need to be maintained and strengthened for generations to come. The formal establishment of the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division in the closing months of the 1940s represented far more than a simple reorganization of the wartime Strategic Scientific Reserve. The creation of S.H.I.E.L.D. marked humanity's first systematic attempt to prepare for threats that transcended national boundaries and conventional military understanding, an acknowledgement that the discoveries made during the war against Hydra had fundamentally altered the security landscape for generations to come. The decision to transform the SSR into a permanent international organization was not made lightly by the Allied leadership. The war had demonstrated that supernatural phenomena and advanced technologies posed threats that no single nation could address effectively, regardless of their military or economic power. The artifacts recovered from Hydra facilities, the technologies reverse-engineered from their equipment, and the knowledge gained through years of studying impossible phenomena had created both unprecedented opportunities and equally unprecedented responsibilities for the nations that possessed them. The naming of the new organization reflected the expanded scope of its mission and the international character of the threats it was being created to counter. The Strategic Scientific Reserve had been primarily a wartime intelligence and research organization focused on a specific enemy, but S.H.I.E.L.D. was conceived as a permanent institution capable of adapting to whatever supernatural or technological threats might emerge in the decades to come. The very name emphasized both the protective mission of the organization and the comprehensive nature of the capabilities it would need to develop. The transition from the SSR to S.H.I.E.L.D. required extensive negotiations among the Allied powers, each of which had developed their own understanding of supernatural phenomena and their own approaches to managing the artifacts and technologies recovered during the war. The British had focused primarily on intelligence gathering and containment, while the Americans had emphasized research and practical application. The Soviets, though not officially part of the new organization, had clearly developed their own supernatural research programs and would need to be considered in any comprehensive approach to global supernatural security. The charter establishing S.H.I.E.L.D. was signed in a classified ceremony attended by representatives of the major Allied nations, though the details of the organization's mission and capabilities remained highly classified even within government circles. The public announcement simply described the formation of a new international security cooperation organization, without any reference to the supernatural phenomena or advanced technologies that were its actual focus. This tradition of maintaining public secrecy while operating with limited governmental oversight would become one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s defining characteristics. The selection of the organization's first director required careful consideration of both the technical qualifications necessary to understand S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mission and the diplomatic skills needed to manage relationships with multiple national governments. The chosen candidate needed to command respect from military leaders, scientists, and intelligence professionals, while also possessing the vision to guide an organization operating in uncharted territory. The position demanded someone who could balance the competing interests of different nations while maintaining focus on threats that transcended any particular political or economic agenda. The early years of S.H.I.E.L.D's existence were characterized by a deliberate process of institutional development designed to create sustainable capabilities for addressing long-term threats. Unlike wartime organizations that could rely on temporary measures and emergency funding, S.H.I.E.L.D. needed to develop permanent facilities, training programs, and operational procedures that would remain effective across multiple decades and changing political circumstances. This long-term perspective influenced every aspect of the organization's development, from recruitment policies to equipment procurement. The establishment of S.H.I.E.L.D. Its distinctive organizational culture began with the recognition that agents would need to maintain their effectiveness while dealing with phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of reality. The psychological preparation that had been developed by the SSR during the war was expanded into comprehensive training programs designed to produce agents who could function professionally in any situation, regardless of how impossible it might appear, according to normal scientific understanding. The development of S.H.I.E.L.D. Its iconic eagle logo reflected the organization's mission of vigilant protection and its international character. The eagle represented the watchful guardianship that the organization would maintain over humanity, while the circular design emphasized the global scope of both the threats being monitored and the protection being provided. The logo became one of the few public symbols associated with the organization, appearing on official documents and equipment while maintaining the secrecy of S.H.I.E.L.D's actual operations. The recruitment strategies developed during S.H.I.E.L.D. each early years drew personnel from military, intelligence, academic, and scientific backgrounds, creating a diverse organization capable of addressing the multifaceted nature of supernatural and technological threats. Military veterans provided operational expertise and discipline. Intelligence professionals contributed surveillance and analysis capabilities. Academics brought theoretical knowledge and research skills, while scientists offered the technical expertise necessary to understand and counter advanced technologies. The challenge of recruiting international personnel while maintaining operational security required the development of new approaches to background investigation and psychological assessment. Traditional loyalty screening methods were inadequate for an organization whose mission transcended national boundaries and whose personnel would be exposed to information and experiences that could not be shared with their home. Governments, S.H.I.E.L.D., developed assessment protocols that emphasized personal integrity and commitment to humanity's welfare rather than loyalty to any particular nation or political system. The establishment of permanent headquarters facilities represented one of S.H.I.E.L.D's most significant early investments, requiring the construction of installations capable of housing both conventional administrative functions and specialized research laboratories for studying supernatural phenomena. These facilities needed to accommodate the storage and analysis of potentially dangerous artifacts, while also serving as operational centers for coordinating global activities. The engineering challenges involved in creating such installations pushed the boundaries of contemporary construction and security technology. The relationship between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the United Nations reflected the complex political realities of international cooperation in the post-war era. While the organization operated with UN sanction and oversight, the classified nature of its mission meant that most UN officials had only limited understanding of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. activities. This created a structure of accountability that satisfied the political requirements of member nations, while preserving the operational secrecy necessary for effective supernatural threat response. The Cold War tensions that dominated international relations throughout the 1950s and 60s presented unique challenges for an organization whose mission required global cooperation. S.H.I.E.L.D. found itself operating in an environment where the major world powers viewed each other with suspicion and hostility, while simultaneously needing to coordinate responses to threats that pose dangers to all humanity regardless of political affiliation. The organization's success in maintaining its mission during this period required careful diplomatic management and the development of operational protocols that could function despite broader international tensions. The Soviet Union's exclusion from formal S.H.I.E.L.D. membership, while politically inevitable given Cold War realities, created significant complications for global supernatural security. Intelligence reports suggested that Soviet research programs were investigating many of the same phenomena that S.H.I.E.L.D. was studying, but without coordination or information sharing. Both organizations were potentially vulnerable to threats that neither could address independently. This situation led to the development of informal communication channels and occasional covert cooperation, on issues where mutual interests clearly outweighed political considerations. S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. approach to managing supernatural phenomena during the Cold War era emphasized containment and study rather than active utilization, reflecting lessons learned from Hydra's attempts to weaponize forces that they did not fully understand. The organization's research programs focused on developing better understanding of supernatural phenomena and more effective protection against their potential misuse, rather than seeking to create new weapons or capabilities that might themselves pose threats to global security. The development of specialized detection and monitoring systems represented one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most important technological achievements during this period. These systems were designed to identify the emergence of supernatural phenomena or the activation of dangerous artifacts anywhere in the world, providing early warning that would allow for rapid response before threats could develop into global crises. The global sensor network required unprecedented international cooperation and technological innovation, creating capabilities that would not be matched by any other organization for decades. The establishment of regional operational centers allowed S.H.I.E.L.D. to maintain effective response capabilities despite the global scope of its mission. These facilities were strategically located to provide coverage of all populated areas while also maintaining secure communications with headquarters and other operational centers. Each regional center was equipped to handle initial response to supernatural threats while also serving as bases for longer-term operations that might be required in their geographic areas. The training academies established during S.H.I.E.L.D.'s early years created standardized programs for preparing agents to handle the unique challenges of supernatural threat response. These programs combined traditional intelligence and military training with specialized instruction in anomalous phenomenon recognition, artifact handling procedures, and psychological resilience techniques. The curriculum was continuously updated as new threats were identified and new countermeasures were developed, ensuring that agents remained prepared for whatever challenges they might encounter. The development of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s distinctive equipment and technology represented a systematic effort to provide agents with tools specifically designed for supernatural threat environments. Standard military and intelligence equipment often proved inadequate when dealing with phenomena that operated according to non-conventional principles, requiring the development of specialized instruments and weapons that could function effectively regardless of the nature of the threats being encountered. The relationship between S.H.I.E.L.D. and various national intelligence services required careful management to maintain cooperation while preserving operational security. Most intelligence professionals lacked the clearance or experience necessary to understand S.H.I.E.L.D's actual mission, but their cooperation was often essential for operational success. This led to the development of limited disclosure protocols that provided partner organizations with the minimum information necessary for cooperation without compromising the security of supernatural threat response operations. The Scientific Advisory Board established to guide S.H.I.E.L.D. research programs brought together the world's leading experts in physics, chemistry, biology, and related fields. Though many board members were not fully informed about the supernatural context of their advisory work, this structure allowed the organization to benefit from cutting-edge scientific knowledge while maintaining the secrecy necessary for operational security. The advisory board's recommendations influenced the development of new detection technologies, containment procedures, and threat assessment methodologies. The emergence of enhanced individuals during the Cold War period represented a new category of potential threat that S.H.I.E.L.D. needed to address. Unlike the artifacts and technologies inherited from the war against Hydra, enhanced individuals were human beings whose capabilities had been altered through exposure to supernatural phenomena or advanced technology. Managing relationships with such individuals required entirely new approaches that balanced security concerns with respect for human rights and individual dignity. The psychological support services developed for S.H.I.E.L.D. agents reflected the unique stresses associated with regular exposure to supernatural phenomena and the isolation that resulted from being unable to discuss their work with friends or family members. These support systems were designed to help agents maintain their mental health and professional effectiveness despite the extraordinary demands of their service. The development of these programs represented one of the first systematic attempts to address the mental health implications of supernatural threat response work. The international legal framework governing S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. operations required extensive negotiations and careful drafting to provide the organization with the authority necessary to respond effectively to global threats while respecting national sovereignty and individual rights. The resulting agreements established precedents for international cooperation that would influence global security arrangements for decades to come. Though most of the legal framework remained classified and unknown to the general public, the Cold War era also saw the emergence of competing organizations with similar missions but different approaches to supernatural threat management. Some of these organizations emphasized military applications of supernatural phenomena, while others focused on commercial exploitation or political control. S.H.I.E.L.D. Its approach of containment and protection often put it in conflict with these other organizations, leading to a shadow conflict that paralleled the broader Cold War tensions between East and West. The technological innovations developed during this period laid the foundation for capabilities that would prove essential in later decades as threats became more sophisticated and global in scope. The early warning systems, containment technologies, and specialized equipment created during the Cold War provided S.H.I.E.L.D. with advantages that would be crucial for responding to the enhanced individuals and alien technologies that would emerge in subsequent years. The establishment of secure communication networks capable of functioning despite supernatural interference represented another significant technological achievement. These networks needed to maintain reliability even in environments where conventional electronics might be disrupted by anomalous energy fields or reality-altering phenomena. The development of these communication systems required innovations in both hardware and software that pushed the boundaries of available technology. As the Cold War progressed toward its eventual conclusion, S.H.I.E.L.D. found itself increasingly well-positioned to address the emerging threats of a changing world. The institutional foundations laid during the organization's first decades of existence had created capabilities and expertise that would prove essential as humanity encountered new forms of supernatural phenomena and advanced technology. The shield that had been raised to protect humanity from the threats revealed during World War II had evolved into a comprehensive global defense system capable of adapting to whatever challenges the future might bring. The ascension of Nicholas Joseph Fury to the directorship of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the early 1980s marked the beginning of what would become the most transformative period in the organization's history. Fury brought to his role a combination of battlefield experience, strategic thinking, and an almost paranoid attention to detail that would fundamentally reshape how S.H.I.E.L.D. approached its mission of protecting humanity from supernatural and technological threats. His leadership philosophy, forged through decades of military service and intelligence operations, emphasized preparation for the unthinkable and the development of contingency plans for scenarios that conventional security thinking would dismiss as impossible. Fury's military background had been shaped by experiences that prepared him uniquely for the challenges of leading an organization whose mission transcended normal understanding of security threats. His service in conventional conflicts had taught him the importance of intelligence gathering and strategic planning, while his exposure to classified operations had given him an appreciation for the kinds of threats that existed beyond public knowledge. This combination of practical experience and theoretical understanding made him ideally suited to guide S.H.I.E.L.D. through the complex challenges of the late 20th century. The loss of Fury's left eye during a classified operation in the 1970s had more than symbolic significance for his approach to leadership and security planning. The incident that cost him his vision had also provided him with first-hand experience of how quickly conventional operations could encounter threats that defied standard military doctrine. This personal encounter with the unpredictable nature of S.H.I.E.L.D. operational environment reinforced his belief that successful leadership required constant vigilance and preparation for every possible contingency, no matter how unlikely it might appear. Fury's rise through S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's ranks had been marked by a series of operations that demonstrated both his tactical brilliance and his ability to adapt to situations that conventional military training had not anticipated. His willingness to question established procedures and develop new approaches to unprecedented challenges had brought him to the attention of senior leadership, while his success in managing complex operations involving supernatural phenomena had proven his capability to handle the organization's most sensitive missions. The transition from field operative to strategic leader required Fury to develop new skills and perspectives while maintaining the operational instincts that had made him successful in direct action roles. His approach to leadership emphasized the importance of personal relationships and individual loyalty, while also maintaining the institutional discipline necessary for effective organizational management. This balance between personal and professional considerations would become one of the defining characteristics of his directorship. One of Fury's most significant innovations as director was his systematic approach to identifying and cataloging potential threats that existed beyond S.H.I.E.L.D.'s immediate operational environment. His threat assessment programs went far beyond traditional intelligence gathering to include theoretical analysis of potential future developments in technology, supernatural phenomena, and enhanced individual capabilities. This forward-thinking approach reflected his belief that effective security required preparation for threats that had not yet materialized, but could be anticipated through careful analysis and strategic planning. The development of Fury's signature paranoia was not a personal quirk, but a professional adaptation to the realities of leading an organization whose mission involved protection against threats that conventional security thinking could not address. His insistence on multiple backup plans, compartmentalized information, and redundant security measures reflected hard-learned lessons about the unpredictable nature of supernatural and technological threats. What might appear to outsiders as excessive caution was actually a systematic approach to managing risks that could have catastrophic consequences if not properly anticipated. Fury's network of trusted operatives and informants extended far beyond S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's official organizational structure, creating an intelligence-gathering capability that could function even if the organization's formal systems were compromised or destroyed. This network was built through decades of careful relationship building and personal loyalty, creating connections that transcended official hierarchies and bureaucratic structures. The personal nature of these relationships provided Fury with sources of information and operational capability that would prove crucial during periods of organizational crisis. The relationship between Fury and the World Security Council represented one of the most complex aspects of his leadership tenure. The Council's role as S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D's nominal oversight body, created inevitable tensions between democratic accountability and operational necessity, particularly when dealing with threats that council members might not fully understand or accept. Fury's approach to managing this relationship involved providing council members with the information they needed to make informed decisions while carefully controlling access to details that might compromise operational security or exceed their clearance levels. Fury's vision for S.H.I.E.L.D's future emphasized the need for proactive threat response rather than reactive crisis management. His strategic planning process involved identifying potential threats years or even decades in advance and developing the capabilities necessary to address them before they could mature into active dangers. This approach required significant investments in research and development, personnel training, and infrastructure development that might not show immediate returns but would prove essential for long-term security. The modernization of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. organizational structure under Fury's leadership reflected his understanding that traditional hierarchical management approaches were inadequate for an organization dealing with rapidly evolving and unpredictable threats. His reforms emphasized flexibility, rapid decision-making, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances without losing institutional coherence or operational effectiveness. These changes prepared S.H.I.E.L.D. for the accelerated pace of threat development that would characterize the early 21st century. The conception of what would eventually become known as the Avengers Initiative represented perhaps Fury's most ambitious and forward-thinking strategic development. The initiative was based on his recognition that conventional S.H.I.E.L.D. resources and capabilities, however advanced, would ultimately prove inadequate for addressing the most extreme categories of global threats. The theoretical framework for assembling a team of enhanced individuals capable of responding to threats beyond normal human capability reflected Fury's willingness to explore unconventional solutions to unprecedented problems. The early phases of the Avengers Initiative involved extensive research into the psychology and capabilities of enhanced individuals, with particular attention to the factors that determined whether such individuals would use their abilities for constructive or destructive purposes. Fury understood that the successful recruitment of enhanced individuals would require more than simply identifying those with useful capabilities, but would depend on finding individuals whose character and motivation aligned with S.H.I.E.L.D., part's protective mission. The psychological profiling programs developed for potential Avengers candidates represented some of the most sophisticated behavioral analysis work ever undertaken by S.H.I.E.L.D. These programs needed to assess not only an individual's current psychological state and motivation, but also their potential for development and growth under the extraordinary pressures that would be associated with membership in such a team. The profiles needed to predict how individuals would respond to situations that had never been encountered before and could not be simulated through conventional training exercises. The development of containment and recruitment strategies for enhanced individuals required S.H.I.E.L.D. to reconsider fundamental assumptions about how the organization interacted with civilians who possessed extraordinary capabilities. Traditional intelligence and law enforcement approaches were often inadequate or counterproductive when dealing with individuals whose abilities might exceed those of entire military units. Fury's approach emphasized building trust and demonstrating mutual respect rather than attempting to control or coerce cooperation. The establishment of facilities capable of housing and training enhanced individuals represented one of the most significant infrastructure investments in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s history. These facilities needed to provide both the security necessary to contain potentially dangerous individuals and the comfort and dignity appropriate for individuals who were being recruited rather than imprisoned. The design challenges involved in creating such facilities required innovations in both security technology and environmental psychology. The ethical considerations surrounding the recruitment and management of enhanced individuals forced S.H.I.E.L.D. to develop new policy frameworks for situations that had no precedent in law, ethics, or organizational management theory. Questions about consent, privacy, and individual rights became particularly complex when dealing with individuals whose capabilities might pose existential threats to entire populations if misused. Fury's approach to these issues emphasized transparency and voluntary cooperation while maintaining the security measures necessary to protect both the enhanced individuals and the general public. The development of specialized equipment for enhanced operatives required advances in materials, science, engineering, and manufacturing that pushed the boundaries of available technology. Traditional military and intelligence equipment was often inadequate for individuals whose capabilities exceeded normal human limitations, requiring the creation of tools and systems that could function effectively in environments and situations that conventional equipment could not handle. Fury's vision for international integration of S.H.I.E.L.D. operations reflected his understanding that the threats facing humanity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries would be global in scope and would require coordinated responses that transcended national boundaries and political divisions. His efforts to strengthen relationships with international partners and to develop cooperative frameworks for global threat response helped prepare S.H.I.E.L.D. for the challenges that would emerge with increasing frequency in the decades to come. The construction of the Triskelion facility represented the culmination of Fury's modernization efforts and his vision for S.H.I.E.L.D's future capabilities. The facility was designed to serve not only as the organization's primary headquarters, but also as a symbol of its commitment to transparency and accountability, while maintaining the security necessary for its classified mission. The architectural design incorporated both advanced security features and public accessibility, reflecting the balance between secrecy and democratic oversight that Fury sought to maintain. The Triskelion's location on the Potomac River between Washington and Virginia was chosen to emphasize S.H.I.E.L.D. relationship with the United States government, while also providing the security and accessibility necessary for international operations. The facility's design incorporated lessons learned from decades of S.H.I.E.L.D. operations, including the need for redundant systems, emergency protocols, and the ability to function independently during crisis situations. The advanced communication and coordination systems installed at the Triskelion created unprecedented capabilities for managing global operations and coordinating responses to multiple simultaneous threats. These systems were designed to function even in environments where conventional technology might be disrupted by supernatural phenomena or advanced enemy capabilities, ensuring that S.H.I.E.L.D. could maintain command and control capabilities under any conceivable circumstances. The research and development facilities incorporated into the Triskelion complex represented Fury's commitment to maintaining S.H.I.E.L.D's technological advantages through continuous innovation and adaptation. These facilities were equipped to study and develop countermeasures for any type of threat that might be encountered, from conventional weapons and technology to supernatural phenomena and alien artifacts. The integration of research and operational capabilities within a single facility reflected Fury's understanding of the importance of rapid adaptation and response in dealing with evolving threats. The expansion of S.H.I.E.L.D's operations to every continent and major nation during Fury's tenure required careful diplomatic management and the development of operational protocols that could function effectively across diverse political and cultural environments. This global expansion was not simply a matter of establishing physical presence, but involved building relationships and developing capabilities that could address regional threats while maintaining coordination with global strategic objectives. The integration of cutting-edge surveillance and intelligence technologies during this period created capabilities that surpassed those of any other intelligence organization in history. However, Fury was careful to ensure that these capabilities were deployed in ways that respected legal and ethical constraints while providing the information necessary for effective threat assessment and response. The balance between intelligence gathering effectiveness and respect for privacy rights represented one of the most challenging aspects of his leadership. The development of rapid response capabilities for global threats required innovations in transportation, communication, and logistics that enabled S.H.I.E.L.D. to deploy resources anywhere in the world within hours of threat identification. These capabilities were built through partnerships with military and civilian organizations, creating a network of resources and relationships that could be activated when circumstances required immediate action beyond S.H.I.E.L.D. is organic capabilities. Fury's approach to training and professional development emphasized the importance of adaptability and creative thinking in dealing with threats that might not conform to established patterns or expectations. His training programs prepared agents not only for known threat categories but also for situations that had never been encountered before and might require entirely new approaches to assessment and response. This emphasis on intellectual flexibility and innovation became one of the defining characteristics of S.H.I.E.L.D. culture during his tenure. The legacy of Fury's directorship would be measured not only by the specific programs and capabilities he developed, but by the institutional culture and strategic approach he established for dealing with an uncertain and dangerous future. His emphasis on preparation, vigilance, and proactive threat response created an organizational philosophy that would guide S.H.I.E.L.D. through the challenges and crises that would define the early 21st century. The emergence of Anthony Edward Stark as Iron Man in the spring of 2008 represented a watershed moment not only for S.H.I.E.L.D., his operational secrecy, but for humanity's understanding of its place in an increasingly complex and dangerous universe. For decades, the organization had operated in the shadows, protecting the world from threats that the public could neither comprehend nor accept, maintaining the comfortable illusion that conventional military and law enforcement capabilities were sufficient to address all potential dangers to human civilization. Stark's dramatic announcement that he was Iron Man, delivered with characteristic arrogance and disregard for established protocols, shattered the carefully maintained boundaries between the world of classified supernatural threats and public awareness. Director Fury had spent years developing contingency plans for managing enhanced individuals who might reveal themselves publicly. But even his extensive preparations had not fully anticipated the cascading implications of a billionaire industrialist with advanced military technology announcing his superhero identity to the world's media. The relationship between Tony Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. was complicated from the beginning by the legacy of his father's involvement with the organization and by Stark's own complex personality. Howard Stark had been one of S.H.I.E.L.D., its founding figures and most important technological innovators, contributing inventions and insights that had shaped the organization's capabilities for decades. Tony's knowledge of his father's classified work created both opportunities and complications for S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's efforts to manage his emergence as a public superhero. Stark Industries' technological capabilities had been essential to S.H.I.E.L.D's operations since the organization's founding, providing advanced materials, manufacturing techniques, and research support that enabled the development of specialized equipment for supernatural threat response. Tony Stark's personal genius had accelerated these capabilities to unprecedented levels, creating technologies that in some cases exceeded even S.H.I.E.L.D. as most advanced systems. The arc reactor technology that powered his armor represented a breakthrough in energy generation that had implications far beyond individual enhancement applications. The challenge of managing a public superhero required S.H.I.E.L.D. to develop entirely new operational protocols and public relations strategies. Traditional methods of maintaining secrecy and controlling information flow were inadequate when dealing with an individual who actively courted media attention and whose activities were witnessed by millions of people through news, coverage, and social media. Fury's approach emphasized building a collaborative relationship with Stark while carefully managing the flow of information that could compromise ongoing operations or reveal classified capabilities. The psychological profile of Tony Stark presented both opportunities and risks for S.H.I.E.L.D. objectives. His genius-level intelligence and innovative thinking made him an invaluable asset for developing new technologies and approaches to emerging threats. while his resources and manufacturing capabilities provided operational support that would have been difficult to obtain through other means. However, his tendency toward arrogance, his difficulty accepting authority, and his impulsive decision-making created ongoing challenges for organizational coordination and strategic planning. The Iron Man armor's technological specifications exceeded many of S.H.I.E.L.D. existing capabilities, particularly in the areas of miniaturized power generation, advanced materials, and integrated weapons systems. Stark's willingness to share certain aspects of his technology with S.H.I.E.L.D., while maintaining strict control over others, reflected his complex relationship with the organization and his determination to maintain independence despite growing cooperation. The selective nature of this technology sharing required careful negotiation and ongoing relationship management. The public reaction to Iron Man's emergence was mixed, with enthusiasm for a visible superhero balanced by concerns about accountability and the implications of private military capabilities exceeding those of national governments. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s role in managing these public concerns required delicate diplomacy and careful coordination with political leaders who were struggling to understand the implications of superhuman capabilities in democratic societies. The discovery of Thor and first contact with Asgardian civilization represented an even more profound challenge to human understanding and S.H.I.E.L.D. mission scope. The arrival of a being who claimed to be a Norse god, wielding a hammer that defied conventional physics and demonstrating capabilities that seemed to violate fundamental laws of science, forced both the organization and humanity to confront the reality that Earth existed within a much larger and more complex cosmic community than anyone had previously imagined. The initial encounter with Thor in New Mexico provided S.H.I.E.L.D. with its first opportunity to study Asgardian technology and biology through direct observation rather than ancient artifacts. Agent Coulson's management of the situation demonstrated the organization's ability to adapt established protocols for supernatural phenomena to entirely new categories of encounter, while also highlighting the limitations of conventional approaches when dealing with beings whose capabilities exceeded any previously documented threat levels. The implications of Asgardian civilization for Earth's security status were profound and far-reaching. The existence of a technologically advanced civilization with interplanetary travel capabilities and individual members possessing godlike powers meant that humanity's position in the cosmic hierarchy was far more precarious than anyone had previously understood. The Nine Realms cosmology that Thor described suggested that Earth existed within a complex network of civilizations and power relationships that could affect human survival regardless of terrestrial, political, or military developments. Thor's personal psychology and cultural background presented unique challenges for integration into Earth's defensive strategies. His thousands of years of combat experience and his warrior culture mentality made him an invaluable military asset. But his unfamiliarity with contemporary human society and technology required careful management to prevent misunderstandings or cultural conflicts. His relationship with Dr. Jane Foster provided both emotional stability and potential vulnerability that needed to be considered in operational planning. The recovery and awakening of Steve Rogers represented the return of a living legend whose symbolic importance exceeded even his considerable military capabilities. Captain America's emergence from 70 years of suspended animation brought with it the psychological and emotional weight of direct connection to S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's origins in the Strategic Scientific Reserve, while also providing the organization with access to first-hand knowledge of Hydra's historical operations and capabilities. The process of integrating Captain America into contemporary S.H.I.E.L.D. operations required sensitivity to both his personal adjustment challenges and his unique perspective on the organization's mission and methods. Rogers' moral clarity and leadership experience made him an invaluable asset for team coordination and strategic planning, while his direct experience with supernatural threats provided insights that complemented S.H.I.E.L.D, accumulated knowledge base. The psychological challenges faced by Steve Rogers in adapting to the 21st century were complicated by his role as both a symbol and an operational asset. His adjustment to contemporary technology, social norms, and political realities needed to be managed carefully to maintain his effectiveness as both a leader and a public representative of heroic values. S.H.I.E.L.D. Support systems for enhanced individuals were expanded to address the unique needs of someone dealing with temporal displacement and survivor guilt. Captain America's shield, constructed from vibranium by Howard Stark during World War II, represented one of the most advanced examples of materials engineering in S.H.I.E.L.D. is inventory. The S.H.I.E.L.D.'s unique properties provided both defensive and offensive capabilities that exceeded conventional military equipment, while also serving as a symbol of American values and resistance to tyranny. The S.H.I.E.L.D.'s design and construction incorporated principles that continued to influence S.H.I.E.L.D's equipment development programs. The relationship between these three extraordinary individuals and their integration into S.H.I.E.L.D's operational framework required the development of new organizational structures and management approaches. Traditional military hierarchy and intelligence service protocols were inadequate for managing individuals whose capabilities and perspectives differed so dramatically from conventional personnel. Fury's approach emphasized personal relationships and mutual respect rather than formal authority structures. The Tesseract research program, designated Project Pegasus, represented S.H.I.E.L.D's most ambitious attempt to understand and harness cosmic-level energy sources for human applications. The cube's apparent ability to generate unlimited energy had been recognized since its recovery during World War II, but the technological capabilities necessary to safely study and utilize such forces had only recently become available through advances in materials science and electromagnetic field manipulation. Dr. Eric Selvig's involvement in the Tesseract research brought academic scientific expertise to complement S.H.I.E.L.D's more practical engineering approaches. His theoretical background in astrophysics and quantum mechanics provided frameworks for understanding phenomena that exceeded the boundaries of conventional scientific knowledge, while his collaboration with Thor had given him unique insights into the intersection between advanced technology and cosmic forces. The development of Tesseract-powered weapons and technology represented both an opportunity to create defensive capabilities commensurate with emerging threats and a risk of unleashing forces that could prove uncontrollable. The ethical implications of weaponizing cosmic energy sources were debated extensively within S.H.I.E.L.D's leadership, with concerns about unintended consequences balanced against the need to prepare for threats that conventional military technology could not address. The energy readings generated by Tesseract research had unintended consequences that extended far beyond Earth's immediate vicinity. The cosmic energy signatures produced by the experiments acted as a beacon that could be detected across interstellar distances, inadvertently advertising Earth's possession of advanced energy sources to civilizations that might view such capabilities as either opportunities or threats. Loki's arrival through the Tesseract portal represented the materialization of threats that S.H.I.E.L.D's theoretical planning had anticipated but hoped to avoid. His possession of the Mind Stone, though its nature was not immediately understood, gave him capabilities that exceeded even Thor's considerable powers, while also providing him with psychological manipulation abilities that made conventional security measures inadequate for containment. The psychological manipulation capabilities demonstrated by Loki during his initial capture and containment revealed vulnerabilities in S.H.I.E.L.D. security protocols that had not been previously identified or addressed. His ability to influence human behavior through direct mental manipulation meant that traditional interrogation and containment procedures could be compromised in ways that might not be immediately apparent to security personnel. The Chitauri invasion represented humanity's first encounter with organized extraterrestrial military forces, providing concrete evidence of threats that had previously existed only in theoretical planning scenarios. The alien technology and capabilities demonstrated during the attack exceeded Earth's defensive capabilities by orders of magnitude, making it clear that conventional military responses would be inadequate for addressing similar future threats. The successful deployment of the Avengers during the Battle of New York validated decades of theoretical planning and demonstrated that enhanced individuals could function effectively as a coordinated team under extreme combat conditions. The diverse capabilities of the team members complemented each other in ways that created tactical advantages exceeding the sum of their individual abilities, while their willingness to sacrifice personal safety for civilian protection demonstrated the moral foundation necessary for such extraordinary power. The coordination of military and civilian evacuation efforts during the battle demonstrated S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's ability to function as both a combat organization and an emergency management agency, integrating its specialized capabilities with conventional emergency services to minimize civilian casualties while maintaining focus on the primary threat. The organization's communication and logistics capabilities proved essential for managing the complex requirements of urban combat involving both conventional and superhuman forces. The aftermath of the Battle of New York required extensive cleanup and damage assessment efforts that revealed both the resilience of modern urban infrastructure and its vulnerability to attacks involving advanced alien technology. The psychological impact on civilian populations who had witnessed proof of extraterrestrial life and hostile intentions required careful management to prevent panic while also acknowledging the reality of changed circumstances. The public revelation of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's existence and mission marked the end of decades of secrecy and the beginning of a new era of public accountability and oversight. The organization's role in coordinating Earth's defense against alien invasion could not be concealed or denied, requiring the development of new approaches to public relations and democratic accountability that balanced operational security with legitimate public interest in understanding their protectors' capabilities and objectives. The political implications of the successful defense against alien invasion extended far beyond immediate security concerns to encompass questions about Earth's position in the cosmic community and the appropriate level of preparation for future threats. World governments were forced to acknowledge that their conventional military capabilities were inadequate for addressing the types of threats that Earth might face, while also grappling with the implications of relying on enhanced individuals for national and global security. The establishment of the Avengers as Earth's premier superhero team created both opportunities and challenges for S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's ongoing mission. The team's success in addressing threats beyond conventional capabilities validated the theoretical framework that had guided the Avengers initiative, while also creating expectations for rapid response to future crises that might exceed the team's actual capabilities or availability. The integration of Avengers operations with S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's broader mission required the development of new organizational structures and operational protocols that could accommodate the unique requirements of enhanced individuals, while maintaining the discipline and coordination necessary for effective threat response. The balance between individual initiative and team coordination became a central challenge for both the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. leadership. The technological and scientific knowledge gained through contact with Asgardian civilization and Chitauri technology provided unprecedented opportunities for advancement in human capabilities and understanding. However, the integration of such advanced concepts into human technology and society required careful management to prevent destabilization or unintended consequences that could pose threats equal to those being defended against. The Age of Heroes had begun, marking a fundamental transformation in humanity's relationship with the cosmos and its understanding of its own potential and vulnerability. S.H.I.E.L.D. His role as protector and coordinator had evolved to encompass responsibilities that exceeded the scope of any previous human organization, while also maintaining the core mission of defending humanity against threats that exceeded conventional understanding or capabilities. The revelation that Hydra had not merely survived the defeat of Nazi Germany, but had systematically infiltrated and corrupted S.H.I.E.L.D. from within represented perhaps the most devastating betrayal in the history of organized intelligence operations. For nearly 7 decades, the organization that had been created to protect humanity from supernatural and technological threats had unknowingly harbored the very enemy it had been founded to destroy, allowing Hydra operatives to rise through the ranks to positions of ultimate authority and influence. Alexander Pierce's position as Secretary of the World Security Council and his role in S.H.I.E.L.D's oversight structure had provided him with access to the organization's most sensitive operations and strategic planning for over 2 decades. His carefully cultivated reputation as a dedicated public servant and his apparent commitment to democratic oversight had made him one of the most trusted figures in the international security community, while simultaneously allowing him to guide S.H.I.E.L.D's development in ways that served Hydra's long-term objectives rather than humanity's protection. The scope of Hydra's infiltration extended far beyond individual operatives or isolated cells to encompass entire departments, research programs, and operational divisions within S.H.I.E.L.D. structure. Key personnel in communications, logistics, research and development, and field operations had been Hydra agents for years or even decades, creating a parallel command structure that could influence or control virtually any aspect of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's activities without detection by legitimate personnel. The psychological impact of discovering such extensive betrayal was profound and lasting for the loyal S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who had devoted their careers to the organization's mission, agents who had trusted their colleagues with their lives, who had believed in the righteousness of their cause, and who had sacrificed personal relationships and normal lives for their service, found themselves questioning every operation they had ever participated in and every decision they had ever supported. The realization that many of their fallen comrades had died not in service to humanity's protection, but as victims of Hydra's manipulation and betrayal created a grief that went beyond personal loss to encompass a fundamental questioning of meaning and purpose. Memorial walls and honor ceremonies that had celebrated heroic sacrifice were revealed to have included both genuine heroes and their Hydra executioners, making it impossible to separate authentic service from calculated deception. The Winter Soldier program represented perhaps the most horrific example of Hydra's willingness to corrupt and weaponize everything they touched, including the memory and identity of one of America's greatest heroes. James Buchanan Barnes's transformation from Captain America's loyal companion into Hydra's perfect assassin demonstrated the organization's ability to take the best of human courage and dedication and twist it into an almighty instrument of fear and control. The psychological conditioning and memory manipulation techniques used to create and maintain the Winter Soldier revealed capabilities that exceeded anything in S.H.I.E.L.D's own research programs, suggesting that Hydra had developed mind control technologies through decades of experimentation that violated every principle of human dignity and scientific ethics. The repeated wiping and reconstruction of Barnes's personality represented a form of psychological torture that reduced a human being to a programmable weapon. The assassination missions carried out by the Winter Soldier over the course of 50 years had eliminated key figures whose deaths had shaped the political and social development of the late 20th century. Scientists, political leaders, journalists, and activists whose work might have threatened Hydra's objectives or exposed their operations had been systematically murdered by an assassin whose identity and origins remained unknown to intelligence services worldwide. The personal relationship between Steve Rogers and the Winter Soldier added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating situation. Rogers' discovery that his closest friend had not died heroically during World War II but had been tortured and brainwashed into becoming Hydra's primary assassination asset created an emotional burden that went beyond personal grief to encompass responsibility for all of the Winter Soldier's victims. Dr. Arnim Zola's survival through digital consciousness transfer represented Hydra's most ambitious attempt to achieve immortality for their leadership, while also creating an intelligence resource that could guide their operations. Across multiple generations, Zola's transformation from Nazi scientist to digital entity demonstrated both Hydra's technological capabilities and their fundamental rejection of human limitations and mortality. The algorithm developed by Zola for identifying and eliminating potential threats to Hydra's objectives represented a systematic approach to preventive assassination that would have fundamentally altered human civilization by removing anyone whose actions or ideas might challenge authoritarian control. The scope of the target list, encompassing millions of individuals worldwide, revealed Hydra's ultimate objective of creating a world where independent thought and resistance to authority would be impossible. Project Insight's helicarriers represented the culmination of decades of Hydra infiltration and manipulation, turning S.H.I.E.L.D. most advanced defensive capabilities into instruments of mass surveillance and extermination. The three aircraft had been designed ostensibly as platforms for global threat monitoring and rapid response, but Hydra's modifications had transformed them into orbital execution chambers capable of eliminating any target anywhere on Earth within minutes. The targeting algorithms integrated into the Insight helicarriers could identify and track individual human beings through multiple forms of surveillance data, creating comprehensive profiles that would allow for precise assassination of specific individuals while maintaining plausible deniability about the deaths being anything other than accidents or coincidences. The system's capabilities exceeded those of any surveillance network ever created, making privacy and anonymity impossible for anyone on Earth. The ethical implications of the Insight system extended beyond its intended use for mass assassination to encompass questions about surveillance, privacy, and the relationship between security and freedom in democratic societies. Even if the system had been used solely for legitimate protective purposes, its capabilities would have represented an unprecedented level of government monitoring and control over civilian populations. Steve Rogers' discovery of Hydra's infiltration began with inconsistencies and suspicions that gradually revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. His military background and moral clarity made him sensitive to behavioral patterns and operational decisions that seemed inconsistent with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s stated mission, while his outsider perspective allowed him to see corruption that long-term insiders had learned to accept or ignore. The alliance between Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Sam Wilson represented a return to the personal loyalty and trust relationships that had characterized the best traditions of both S.H.I.E.L.D. and military service. Their willingness to risk everything to expose Hydra's infiltration demonstrated that individual conscience and moral courage could still triumph over institutional corruption and systematic deception. Natasha Romanoff's role in exposing Hydra's infiltration was particularly significant given her own history with intelligence services and her understanding of how organizations could be manipulated and corrupted from within. Her decision to release S.H.I.E.L.D.'s classified files to the public represented a recognition that transparency and accountability were more important than institutional preservation when the institution had been fundamentally compromised. The battle for control of the Insight helicarriers represented both a military operation and a symbolic struggle between Hydra's vision of order through fear and S.H.I.E.L.D, S.H.I.E.L.D, original mission of protection through Prota. Vigilance. The technological superiority of the aircraft made them nearly invulnerable to conventional attack, requiring innovative tactics and significant personal sacrifice to prevent their activation. The destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D's headquarters and infrastructure was both a tactical necessity for preventing Hydra's mass assassination plan and a symbolic recognition that the organization had been so thoroughly compromised that preservation was impossible. The Triskelions' collapse represented the end of an era and the acknowledgement that decades of institutional development had been built on foundations of deception and manipulation. The release of classified information through digital networks worldwide created unprecedented transparency about intelligence operations, while also exposing ongoing missions and personnel to potential retaliation from hostile forces. The decision to sacrifice operational security for democratic accountability reflected a fundamental choice between institutional preservation and public trust that would have lasting implications for international intelligence cooperation. The public revelation of Hydra's infiltration and S.H.I.E.L.D's compromise created a crisis of confidence in intelligence and security institutions that extended far beyond the immediate organizations involved. Citizens and governments worldwide were forced to confront the possibility that their own protective institutions might have been similarly infiltrated or compromised, leading to widespread skepticism about official assurances and security claims. The manhunt for former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents complicated efforts to separate loyal personnel from Hydra infiltrators, creating a situation where dedicated public servants found themselves treated as fugitives and potential terrorists. The difficulty of determining individual loyalty in an organization that had been systematically compromised for decades made it impossible to distinguish between legitimate security concerns and persecution of innocent personnel. The psychological impact of organizational collapse extended beyond professional considerations to encompass personal identity and life purpose for agents who had dedicated their careers to S.H.I.E.L.D's mission. Many found themselves questioning not only their professional judgment, but their fundamental understanding of right and wrong, good and evil, and the possibility of working within institutions to achieve positive change. The loss of infrastructure, resources, and legal authority forced loyal S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel to operate as fugitives and insurgents, using the same covert methods they had previously employed against hostile organizations. This reversal of roles required significant psychological and operational adaptation from agents who had been accustomed to working with institutional support and legal backing. International intelligence cooperation was severely damaged by the revelation that one of the world's premier security organizations had been controlled by hostile forces for decades. Partner organizations were forced to review their own personnel and operations for signs of Hydra infiltration, while also reassessing the reliability of intelligence and operational support they had received from S.H.I.E.L.D. Over the years, the challenge of rebuilding trust and credibility in the intelligence community required fundamental changes in transparency, accountability, and oversight mechanisms that had previously been considered incompatible with effective covert operations. The balance between democratic oversight and operational security needed to be recalibrated to prevent future infiltration while still maintaining the secrecy necessary for effective intelligence work. The survival of Hydra cells and operatives despite S.H.I.E.L.D's collapse demonstrated the decentralized and resilient nature of the organization's structure. Unlike conventional military or intelligence organizations that could be defeated through the destruction of command centers or the capture of leadership, Hydra's ideological foundation and cellular organization made it capable of surviving and reconstituting itself even after major defeats. The revelation that Hydra had been manipulating global events for decades raised questions about the authenticity of historical developments that had been attributed to natural political, social, or economic forces. Wars, revolutions, economic crises, and social movements that had shaped the modern world might have been influenced or directed by Hydra operatives working to advance their long-term objectives of global domination through fear and control. The technological capabilities demonstrated by Hydra during their final gambit suggested that they had been developing advanced systems independently of their infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D, maintaining research and development programs that complemented their intelligence gathering and influence operations. This parallel technological development meant that defeating Hydra would require more than simply removing them from legitimate institutions. The ideological appeal of Hydra's message of order through fear and their willingness to sacrifice freedom for security resonated with individuals and groups worldwide who were frustrated with the complexities and uncertainties of time. Democratic governance. This ideological foundation made Hydra more than just a criminal organization or terrorist group, but a persistent threat to democratic values and individual liberty that could emerge in new forms, even after specific operations were defeated. The personal cost of exposing and defeating Hydra's infiltration was enormous for the individuals who chose to resist, requiring them to sacrifice careers, relationships, and personal safety for the abstract principle of protecting democratic values and human dignity. The heroes who brought down Hydra's conspiracy paid prices that extended far beyond the immediate physical dangers they faced during their operations. The legacy of Hydra's infiltration would continue to influence intelligence and security operations for generations, creating lasting skepticism about institutional reliability and the possibility of preventing similar infiltration in the future. The knowledge that such extensive deception and manipulation were possible would fundamentally alter how democratic societies approached the balance between security and transparency, trust and verification. The fall of S.H.I.E.L.D marked not just the end of a particular organization, but the conclusion of an era of faith in institutions and expertise that had characterized the post-World War II international order. The revelation that humanity's protectors had been compromised by the very forces they were supposed to defend against created a crisis of confidence that would require years or decades to resolve through the patient rebuilding of behavior, trust, and the development of new models for democratic oversight of security operations. The survival of Agent Phil Coulson, long believed dead after his encounter with Loki during the initial stages of the Chitauri invasion, represented more than just the remarkable recovery of a valued operative. His resurrection through the experimental use of alien biology and advanced medical technology had been kept classified even from the Avengers themselves. But his return to active duty would prove essential for S.H.I.E.L.D. survival during its darkest hour. Coulson's unique combination of institutional knowledge, operational experience, and moral clarity made him the ideal candidate to lead the organization's reconstruction from the ashes of betrayal and corruption. The process of rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. as an underground organization required Coulson to abandon decades of established protocols and operational procedures in favor of improvisational methods that could function without institutional support or legal authority. The traditional resources that S.H.I.E.L.D. agents had relied upon, from advanced technology to international cooperation agreements, were no longer available, forcing the remnant organization to operate more like a resistance movement than a professional intelligence service. The psychological challenge of leading a discredited and fugitive organization weighed heavily on Coulson, whose dedication to S.H.I.E.L.D. His original mission had to be balanced against the reality that the organization's reputation had been irreparably damaged by Hydra's infiltration. His efforts to maintain morale and purpose among his small team of loyal agents required constant reinforcement of the values and objectives that had originally motivated their service, even as they were pursued by the very governments they had sworn to protect. The selection of personnel for the new underground S.H.I.E.L.D. required careful evaluation of loyalty, psychological resilience, and operational capability under circumstances that bore little resemblance to traditional intelligence work. Coulson's recruitment strategy emphasized personal relationships and demonstrated character over formal qualifications or institutional rank, creating a team bound together by mutual trust and shared commitment rather than bureaucratic hierarchy. Agent Melinda May's decision to join Coulson's underground operation brought tactical expertise and operational leadership that proved essential for the survival of the rebuilt organization. Her reputation within S.H.I.E.L.D. as both a skilled combatant and a reliable leader helped attract other agents who might have been hesitant to join what appeared to be a desperate and doomed enterprise. Her willingness to sacrifice her retirement and personal safety for the organization's survival demonstrated the depth of loyalty that S.H.I.E.L.D's mission could inspire even under the most difficult circumstances. The recruitment of new agents from outside traditional intelligence and military backgrounds required the development of accelerated training programs that could prepare civilians for the extraordinary demands of supernatural threat. Response: Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons, brilliant young scientists whose expertise in engineering and biochemistry respectively provided capabilities essential for analyzing and countering advanced technologies, represented the kind of innovative thinking that the rebuilt organization would need to remain effective despite limited resources. Grant Ward's initial integration into Coulson's team appeared to validate the effectiveness of the new recruitment and vetting procedures, but his subsequent revelation as a Hydra operative demonstrated the persistent challenge of identifying infiltrators and the psychological damage that such betrayals could inflict on small, closely knit teams. The discovery that their trusted teammate and friend had been manipulating and deceiving them from the beginning created trauma that extended far beyond operational security concerns. The development of mobile operational capabilities allowed the underground S.H.I.E.L.D. to maintain effectiveness despite lacking permanent facilities or secure bases. The converted aircraft that served as their mobile headquarters, affectionately known as the bus, provided both transportation and operational support for missions that required rapid deployment and equally rapid extraction. This mobility was essential for avoiding detection by hostile forces while still maintaining the capability to respond to emerging threats. The technological resources available to Coulson's team were severely limited compared to the advanced systems that had been available to the original S.H.I.E.L.D., requiring creative adaptation and innovative problem-solving to maintain operational effectiveness. Fitz's engineering expertise proved invaluable for modifying and enhancing available equipment, while Simmons's scientific knowledge helped the team understand and counter threats that might otherwise have proven insurmountable. The psychological dynamics of operating as a small, isolated team created both strengths and vulnerabilities that had not been factors in the larger, more bureaucratic structure of the original organization. The close personal relationships that developed between team members provided emotional support and motivation during difficult missions, but also created potential leverage points for enemies seeking to manipulate or compromise their operations. The discovery of the inhuman population and their hidden civilization represented a new category of responsibility for S.H.I.E.L.D. that extended beyond traditional threat monitoring to encompass protection and advocacy for a vulnerable minority population. The emergence of new Inhumans following the release of Terrigen Mist created opportunities for both beneficial cooperation and dangerous conflict, depending on how these powerful individuals were approached and treated by conventional authorities. The inhuman royal family's complex relationship with human civilization had been maintained through centuries of careful secrecy and selective intervention. But the changing global situation and the increasing visibility of enhanced individuals made continued isolation increasingly difficult to maintain. S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. Its role as intermediary between inhuman and human populations required diplomatic skills and cultural sensitivity that went far beyond traditional intelligence work. The establishment of secret training facilities for new inhumans required significant resources and careful security planning to protect vulnerable individuals from exploitation by hostile forces, while also ensuring that their abilities could be developed in ways that served constructive rather than destructive purposes. These facilities needed to provide both physical training and psychological support for individuals whose lives had been fundamentally altered by their transformation. Daisy Johnson's own transformation from hacktivist Skye to powerful inhuman agent represented both the potential for positive integration of enhanced individuals into S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D's mission and the personal costs that such, quote, transformation could entail. Her struggle to understand and control her seismic abilities while also maintaining her identity and relationships demonstrated the complex challenges faced by enhanced individuals in contemporary society. The continuing threat posed by Hydra cells and operatives required constant vigilance and proactive operations to prevent the organization from reconstituting itself or achieving its objectives through alternative means. The decentralized nature of Hydra's structure made it difficult to identify and eliminate all remaining threats, while their ideological appeal continued to attract new recruits who were motivated by the promise of order through authoritarian control. The discovery of Hydra's ancient connections to otherworldly powers revealed that their infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. had been only one aspect of a much larger and more complex conspiracy that extended back thousands of years. The organization's relationship with entities like the ancient inhuman hive demonstrated that their ultimate objectives went far beyond political control to encompass the fundamental transformation of human civilization according to alien or supernatural influences. The psychological horror of confronting enemies who had been manipulated or controlled by supernatural forces required S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to develop new forms of mental and emotional resilience. The knowledge that human consciousness could be altered or overridden by external influences challenged fundamental assumptions about individual agency and moral responsibility, creating philosophical dilemmas that had no clear resolution through traditional ethical frameworks. The development of countermeasures for supernatural manipulation and control required advances in both technology and psychological training that pushed the boundaries of available scientific knowledge. The creation of mental shields and resistance techniques drew from research in neuroscience, psychology, and even mystical traditions that had previously been dismissed as unscientific or superstitious. The underground period also saw the emergence of new threats that had taken advantage of the power vacuum created by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s collapse. Criminal organizations, rogue intelligence services, and enhanced individuals with destructive agendas had all expanded their activities in the absence of effective global oversight, creating a more chaotic and dangerous threat environment that required careful prioritization and strategic response. The challenge of maintaining international cooperation and intelligence sharing without official status or recognition required Coulson and his team to develop informal networks and personal relationships that could provide access to Coulson by information and resources. These relationships were often based on personal trust and shared history rather than formal agreements, making them both more flexible and more fragile than traditional diplomatic arrangements. The moral and ethical challenges of operating outside legal authority forced the underground S.H.I.E.L.D. to develop new guidelines for determining when covert action was justified and how to minimize collateral damage while still accomplishing essential missions. The lack of governmental oversight meant that agents had to rely on personal conscience and team discussion to determine appropriate courses of action, creating both greater freedom and greater responsibility for individual decisions. The gradual rebuilding of technological capabilities through salvage operations, black market acquisitions, and innovative engineering allowed the organization to slowly regain some of the advanced capabilities that had been lost with the destruction of official infrastructure. However, these improvised systems often lacked the reliability and integration of purpose-built S.H.I.E.L.D. technology, requiring agents to adapt their operational procedures to accommodate equipment limitations. The development of new organizational culture during the underground period emphasized flexibility, creativity, and mutual support in ways that differed significantly from the more hierarchical and bureaucratic structure of the original S.H.I.E.L.D. This cultural evolution created both opportunities for innovation and challenges for maintaining discipline and coordination during complex operations. The personal relationships that sustained the underground organization through its most difficult periods demonstrated the importance of human connections and emotional bonds in maintaining organizational cohesion under extreme stress. The family-like dynamics that developed within Coulson's team provided motivation and support that went far beyond professional obligations, creating a foundation of loyalty that could survive even the most severe challenges and betrayals. The gradual expansion of the underground network through the recruitment of additional agents and the establishment of safe houses and operational bases reflected the organization's slow recovery of capability and confidence. However, this expansion also increased vulnerability to detection and infiltration, requiring constant attention to security procedures and personnel vetting that had to be maintained despite limited resources and urgent operational demands. The psychological impact of operating in constant danger and uncertainty took its toll on agents who had to maintain their effectiveness while dealing with the stress of persecution, the grief of lost colleagues, and the responsibility for protecting innocent people with inadequate resources. The development of support systems and coping mechanisms became as important as operational training for maintaining the team's long-term viability. The continuing evolution of threats during the underground period, from technological challenges to supernatural phenomena to enhanced individual conflicts, required the organization to maintain its adaptability and learning capacity despite lacking the research and development resources that had previously been available. This forced innovation and improvisation often led to creative solutions that might not have been developed within the more structured environment of the original organization. The underground S.H.I.E.L.D. survival and eventual legitimization demonstrated that the organization's core mission and values were more important than its institutional structure or official recognition. The dedication of agents who risked everything to continue protecting humanity from threats beyond conventional understanding proved that the ideals that had originally motivated S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D's creation remained valid and necessary, regardless of changing political circumstances or organizational challenges. The international response to the escalating frequency of superhuman incidents and the devastating consequences of uncontrolled enhanced individual conflicts culminated in the drafting and implementation of the Sokovia Accords, a comprehensive framework for regulating the activities of powered individuals that would fundamentally alter the relationship between enhanced persons and the governments they were ostensibly protecting. The Accords represented both an acknowledgement of the legitimate concerns about accountability and oversight that had been raised by civilian populations and political leaders, and a potential threat to the operational flexibility that had made organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D. effective in responding to unprecedented threats. The development of the Sokovia Accords involved extensive negotiations among 117 nations, each bringing their own perspectives on the appropriate balance between individual liberty and collective security when dealing with persons whose capabilities exceeded those of conventional military forces. The complexity of these negotiations was compounded by the classified nature of many enhanced individual activities and the difficulty of explaining supernatural or cosmic threats to political leaders who lacked the security clearances or experiential background necessary to understand the full scope of the challenges being addressed. S.H.I.E.L.D. H.A.L.D.'s role in the development and implementation of the Accords was complicated by the organization's recent history of infiltration and collapse, which had created skepticism about the reliability and accountability of intelligence services among the very governments whose cooperation was essential for effective global security coordination. The underground period had demonstrated the organization's resilience and commitment to its protective mission, but it had also highlighted the potential dangers of operating without democratic oversight and legal constraints. The restoration of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s official status required extensive negotiations and confidence-building measures designed to address legitimate concerns about institutional reliability while preserving the capabilities and operational flexibility necessary for effective threat response. The new organizational structure incorporated enhanced oversight mechanisms, transparency requirements, and accountability measures that represented significant departures from the secretive and autonomous operational culture that had characterized the organization throughout most of its history. Phil Coulson's decision to resign from his position as director upon S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s legitimization reflected both his understanding of the political realities that made his continued leadership problematic and his commitment to the organization's long-term survival over his personal career ambitions. His role in rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. from underground operations had been essential for preserving the organization's mission and capabilities. But his public association with the fugitive period made him a controversial figure whose continued leadership might compromise efforts to rebuild trust with governmental partners. The selection of new leadership for the legitimized S.H.I.E.L.D. required careful consideration of both technical qualifications and political acceptability, as the new director would need to command respect from intelligence professionals while also maintaining credibility with oversight bodies and international partners. The appointment process involved extensive background investigations, psychological evaluations, and policy reviews designed to ensure that the mistakes and vulnerabilities that had enabled Hydra's infiltration could not be repeated. The establishment of new headquarters facilities for the restored organization reflected lessons learned from both the infiltration period and the subsequent underground operations. The new installations incorporated enhanced security measures, compartmentalization protocols, and monitoring systems designed to detect and prevent unauthorized activities while still maintaining the operational capabilities necessary for effective threat response. The balance between security and functionality required innovative architectural and technological solutions that pushed the boundaries of available protective systems. The integration of former underground agents into the legitimized organizational structure created both opportunities and challenges for maintaining operational continuity while adapting to new legal and political constraints. Many agents who had demonstrated exceptional dedication and capability during the fugitive period possessed skills and experience that were invaluable for the organization's mission, but their methods and attitudes had been shaped by circumstances that no longer applied to legitimate operations. The development of new training programs and operational procedures reflected the need to prepare agents for working within legal frameworks and oversight structures that had not existed during the underground period. These programs needed to maintain the flexibility and creativity that had been essential for survival as a fugitive organization while instilling the discipline and accountability required for legitimate governmental operations. The technological capabilities available to the restored S.H.I.E.L.D. represented a significant improvement over the improvised systems that had been used during the underground period, but they also required careful integration with international monitoring and oversight systems that could verify compliance with legal requirements and treaty obligations. The transparency requirements imposed by governmental partners created challenges for maintaining operational security while still providing sufficient information for effective oversight and accountability. The emergence of threats involving alternate dimensions and parallel realities during this period represented a new category of challenge that exceeded the scope of conventional international law and governmental authority. The discovery that Earth existed within a multiverse of infinite alternative realities, each potentially containing different versions of familiar threats or entirely new categories of danger, required the development of new theoretical frameworks and operational procedures that could address risks beyond the imagination of traditional security planning. The first documented encounters with alternate reality versions of familiar individuals and organizations created philosophical and practical challenges that had no precedent in human experience. The possibility that different versions of the same people could have made fundamentally different moral choices or could have been shaped by different historical circumstances raised questions about identity, responsibility, and the nature of good and evil that went far beyond operational concerns. The development of technologies for interdimensional monitoring and communication required advances in theoretical physics and engineering that pushed human scientific understanding into entirely new realms of possibility. The collaboration between S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D, research programs and academic institutions around the world created opportunities for breakthrough discoveries, while also raising concerns about the security implications of such powerful technologies becoming widely available. The psychological challenges faced by agents who encountered alternate versions of themselves or their colleagues required the development of new support systems and counseling approaches that could address forms of identity, confusion, and existential anxiety that had never been documented in psychological literature. The realization that infinite versions of oneself existed across the multiverse, many making different choices and experiencing different fates, created philosophical challenges that some agents found difficult to process and integrate. The establishment of protocols for first contact with alternate reality civilizations drew from diplomatic traditions and anthropological research, while also incorporating lessons learned from encounters with alien civilizations and enhanced individuals. These protocols needed to address the possibility that alternate versions of Earth's governments and organizations might have very different values, capabilities, and objectives despite their superficial similarities to familiar institutions. The multiverse's apparent instability and the discovery of forces that could threaten the existence of entire realities created threat scenarios that exceeded even S.H.I.E.L.D. His extensive experience with cosmic and supernatural dangers. The possibility that actions taken in one reality could have consequences across multiple dimensions meant that every major decision required consideration of ramifications that might extend far beyond Earth's immediate vicinity. The development of emergency protocols for multiverse-level threats required coordination with entities and civilizations whose capabilities and motivations were difficult to understand or predict. The cosmic entities that served as guardians and observers of multiversal stability operated according to principles and timescales that made communication and cooperation challenging, even when their objectives aligned with humanity's own survival interests. The integration of knowledge gained from multiversal encounters into S.H.I.E.L.D. Existing threat assessment and response frameworks required fundamental revisions to strategic planning processes and operational procedures. Traditional concepts of national security and planetary defense became inadequate when dealing with threats that could affect the very existence of reality itself, requiring new approaches to risk assessment and resource allocation. The training programs developed for agents working with multiversal threats emphasized mental flexibility, philosophical resilience, and the ability to maintain operational effectiveness, even when confronting situations that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of existence. These programs drew from meditation traditions, philosophical training, and psychological conditioning techniques that had not previously been considered relevant to intelligence or military work. The ethical implications of multiversal awareness created new categories of moral responsibility that extended far beyond traditional concepts of duty and service. The knowledge that infinite versions of every person existed across different realities raised questions about the value of individual life and choice that required careful consideration to prevent nihilistic or reckless behavior among Beaver personnel exposed to such concepts. The legacy programs established during this period focused on preserving and transmitting the knowledge, skills, and values that had sustained S.H.I.E.L.D. through its various transformations and challenges. These programs recognized that the organization's most important asset was not its technology or facilities, but the institutional culture and collective wisdom that had been developed through decades of experience with unprecedented threats and impossible situations. The establishment of advanced training academies and research institutions created pathways for the next generation of agents and leaders to develop the capabilities necessary for addressing threats that had not yet been imagined. These institutions emphasized interdisciplinary thinking, creative problem-solving, and ethical reasoning as essential skills for anyone who would be responsible for humanity's protection in an increasingly complex and dangerous universe. The development of sustainable operational procedures and organizational structures reflected lessons learned from S.H.I.E.L.D. its various periods of crisis and transformation. The new systems were designed to maintain effectiveness across multiple generations of leadership, while also preserving the flexibility necessary to adapt to changing threat environments and technological developments. The international cooperation frameworks established during the legitimization period created precedents for global security coordination that extended far beyond S.H.I.E.L.D.'s specific mission to encompass broader questions about sovereignty, accountability, and collective responsibility for planetary and multiversal security. These frameworks provided models for how democratic institutions could maintain oversight and control over organizations dealing with threats beyond conventional governmental understanding. The balance between transparency and operational security that was achieved during this period represented a significant evolution in thinking about democratic accountability and national security in the context of supernatural and cosmic threats. The new approaches demonstrated that it was possible to maintain public trust and governmental oversight without compromising the secrecy necessary for effective threat response operations. The technological innovations developed during the Restoration period provided S.H.I.E.L.D. with capabilities that exceeded those of the original organization, while also incorporating safeguards and oversight mechanisms designed to prevent the kind of infiltration and corruption that had led to the Hydra crisis. These systems represented the state-of-the-art in secure communications, threat detection, and response coordination for organizations dealing with multidimensional and cosmic-level challenges. The cultural evolution of S.H.I.E.L.D. during this period reflected a synthesis of the organization's original mission with lessons learned from its various transformations and the changing nature of the threats it was designed to address. The new institutional culture emphasized adaptability, ethical reasoning, international cooperation, and service to humanity's long-term welfare rather than short-term political or national interests. The restoration of S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D's legitimacy, and the expansion of its mission to encompass multiversal threats marked the beginning of a new era in human security planning and international cooperation. The organization that emerged from this period of transformation was fundamentally different from its predecessors, but retained the essential commitment to protecting humanity that had motivated its creation in the aftermath of World War II. The challenges and opportunities of the multiversal age would require continued evolution and adaptation. But the foundation established during the legitimization period provided a solid base for addressing whatever threats might emerge from the infinite possibilities contained within the broader reality that humanity was only beginning to understand. The fundamental mission that has guided S.H.I.E.L.D. throughout its various incarnations and transformations has remained constant, despite the dramatic evolution of the threats it has been created to address. The protection of humanity from dangers that exceed the understanding or capabilities of conventional military and law enforcement institutions. This core purpose, established during the organization's origins as the Strategic Scientific Reserve in World War II, has provided continuity and meaning through periods of institutional collapse, ideological betrayal, and existential crisis that would have destroyed organizations built on less solid foundations. The ethos that has sustained S.H.I.E.L.D. agents through decades of exposure to impossible phenomena and morally complex situations emphasizes service to humanity's welfare over loyalty to any particular government, ideology, or institutional structure. This commitment to principles rather than politics has enabled the organization to survive transitions between different political systems and to maintain its mission even when operating without official sanction or legal authority. The agent's oath, administered to every new recruit regardless of their background or specialization, embodies this commitment to humanity's protection as the highest priority that transcends all other considerations. The balance between necessary secrecy and democratic accountability has represented one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most persistent philosophical and practical challenges throughout its existence. The organization's mission requires access to information and capabilities that could be dangerous if widely disseminated, while democratic principles demand transparency and oversight over institutions that wield significant power on behalf of civilian populations. The evolution of S.H.I.E.L.D's approach to this balance reflects broader social changes in expectations about governmental accountability and individual privacy rights. The concept of sacrifice has been central to S.H.I.E.L.D. culture from the organization's inception, reflecting the reality that protecting humanity from existential threats often requires individuals to risk or sacrifice their personal safety, normal relationships, and conventional life experiences. This culture of sacrifice is not imposed through coercion or manipulation, but emerges from genuine understanding of the stakes involved and personal commitment to values that transcend individual self-interest. The memorial walls and honor ceremonies that commemorate fallen agents serve not only to remember the dead, but to reinforce the importance of their sacrifice for the living. The maintenance of moral clarity in situations that often involve impossible choices and unforeseeable consequences has required the development of ethical frameworks that can guide decision-making even when conventional moral principles seem inadequate or contradictory. S.H.I.E.L.D. ethics training programs emphasize the importance of maintaining human dignity and individual rights even when dealing with threats that challenge fundamental assumptions about human nature and social organization. The organization's approach to ethical dilemmas recognizes that perfect solutions are often impossible, but that the attempt to minimize harm and preserve human values remains essential. The values of loyalty, courage, and integrity that define S.H.I.E.L.D. culture are not merely abstract ideals but practical necessities for maintaining organizational effectiveness in environments where deception, betrayal, and moral compromise are constant threats. The personal relationships between agents often represent the strongest bonds holding the organization together during periods of institutional crisis, as demonstrated during the underground period when formal hierarchies and official authorities were unavailable to maintain discipline and coordination. The emphasis on diversity and international perspectives within S.H.I.E.L.D. reflects both practical necessity and philosophical commitment to representing humanity's full range of experiences and capabilities. The threats facing the organization often transcend cultural, national, and even species boundaries, requiring responses that draw from the widest possible range of knowledge, skills, and perspectives. The international character of S.H.I.E.L.D's personnel has also served as a constant reminder that the organization's mission extends beyond the interests of any particular nation or culture. The balance between individual initiative and organizational discipline has been maintained through leadership structures that emphasize mission accomplishment and team effectiveness rather than rigid hierarchy or bureaucratic procedure. S.H.I.E.L.D. operations often require rapid adaptation to unexpected circumstances and creative solutions to unprecedented problems, making flexibility and independent thinking essential capabilities for all personnel regardless of rank or specialization. The challenge of maintaining humanity while dealing with inhuman threats has required continuous attention to the psychological and emotional welfare of agents, whose work exposes them to experiences that can challenge their fundamental understanding of reality and their place within it. The support systems developed for S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel recognize that exposure to supernatural phenomena, alien civilizations, and enhanced individuals can create forms of stress and trauma that conventional mental health approaches may be inadequate to address. The evolution of S.H.I.E.L.D. values over decades of operation has reflected changing social attitudes about authority, individual rights, and the appropriate role of institutions in democratic societies, while maintaining core commitments that have proven essential for the organization's effectiveness. The ability to adapt organizational culture to contemporary expectations while preserving essential characteristics has been crucial for maintaining public support and governmental cooperation across different political eras. The selection process for potential S.H.I.E.L.D. agents has evolved significantly since the organization's early years, but has consistently emphasized character assessment and psychological evaluation as equal or superior in importance to technical qualifications and professional experience. The unique demands of S.H.I.E.L.D. service require individuals who can maintain their effectiveness and moral compass, even when confronted with situations that challenge everything they thought they understood about the world and their place within it. The rigorous nature of S.H.I.E.L.D. training programs reflects the extraordinary demands that will be placed on agents throughout their careers and the potentially catastrophic consequences of inadequate preparation for the challenges they will face. Physical fitness and combat training remain important components of agent preparation, but equal emphasis is placed on intellectual development, emotional resilience, and ethical reasoning as essential capabilities for personnel who may find themselves making decisions with global or even cosmic implications. The importance of adaptability and creative thinking in S.H.I.E.L.D. training curricula reflects the reality that agents will regularly encounter situations for which no standard procedures exist and no previous experience provides adequate guidance. The ability to assess novel threats, develop innovative solutions, and implement effective responses under extreme pressure represents perhaps the most important skill that agents can develop during their preparation for field service. The development of specialized skills for different categories of threats has required the creation of training tracks and expertise areas that would be considered bizarre or impossible by conventional military and intelligence standards. Agents may specialize in alien technology analysis, supernatural phenomenon investigation, enhanced individual psychology, or interdimensional security protocols. Among other areas that reflect the extraordinary scope of S.H.I.E.L.D. is mission responsibilities. The challenge of preparing agents for encounters with the unimaginable has led to training methodologies that emphasize mental flexibility and psychological resilience over specific knowledge or predetermined responses. Simulation exercises and scenario planning can provide some preparation for unusual situations, but the truly unprecedented nature of many S.H.I.E.L.D. operations means that agents must be prepared to function effectively even when their training has not specifically addressed the challenges they face. The ethical components of S.H.I.E.L.D. training recognize that agents will often be required to make decisions involving life and death, individual liberty, and collective security under circumstances where the consequences of their choices may not be apparent until years or decades later. The development of moral reasoning capabilities and ethical decision-making frameworks is considered as essential as tactical training and technical education for preparing agents to handle the responsibilities they will face. The diverse backgrounds and perspectives of S.H.I.E.L.D. recruits have enriched the organization's capabilities while also creating training challenges that require accommodation of different cultural expectations, educational backgrounds, and professional experiences. The integration of personnel from military, academic, scientific, and civilian backgrounds creates opportunities for innovative thinking, while also requiring careful attention to team building and organizational culture development. The lifelong nature of the commitment required for S.H.I.E.L.D. service extends far beyond employment obligations to encompass ongoing responsibilities for maintaining security clearances, preserving classified information, and continuing professional development as threats evolve and new capabilities become necessary. The psychological and social costs of this commitment are significant and must be carefully considered by both potential recruits and the organization's leadership. The constant evolution of S.H.I.E.L.D. technology and capabilities has required continuous innovation and adaptation to stay ahead of emerging threats while also maintaining compatibility with existing systems and procedures. The integration of alien technologies, supernatural artifacts, and advanced human innovations into operational equipment requires careful testing and evaluation to ensure effectiveness while minimizing unintended consequences or security vulnerabilities. The ethical implications of S.H.I.E.L.D's advanced weapons and surveillance capabilities have required ongoing attention to questions about appropriate use, legal constraints, and moral responsibilities that extend far beyond the immediate tactical considerations of individual operations. The organization's possession of technologies that exceed those available to most national governments creates responsibilities for restraint and careful consideration of long-term consequences that must be balanced against immediate operational needs. The balance between innovation and security in S.H.I.E.L.D's technological development has required sophisticated risk assessment and management procedures that can evaluate both the potential benefits and the possible dangers of new capabilities before they are deployed in operational environments. The history of unintended consequences from advanced technology implementations has created institutional caution that must be balanced against the need for continued advancement to address evolving threats. The importance of international technology sharing within S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. mission framework has created both opportunities for enhanced capabilities through collaboration and risks of technology transfer to potentially hostile organizations or individuals. The protocols governing technology sharing reflect careful consideration of security concerns, diplomatic relationships, and the long-term implications of proliferating advanced capabilities beyond the organization's direct control. The development of artificial intelligence and automation systems for S.H.I.E.L.D. operations has provided significant capabilities for data analysis, threat assessment, and operational coordination, while also creating new vulnerabilities and ethical concerns about the appropriate role of autonomous systems in decisions involving human welfare. The integration of AI capabilities into S.H.I.E.L.D. systems reflects careful consideration of both the potential benefits and the possible risks of increasing reliance on computer-based decision-making. The future trajectory of S.H.I.E.L.D. technology development will likely include continued integration of alien and supernatural technologies, advancement of human enhancement capabilities, and expansion of interdimensional and cosmic monitoring systems that reflect the organization's evolving understanding of the threat environment it exists to address. The challenge will be maintaining human control and ethical oversight over increasingly powerful and complex systems that may exceed human understanding in their operation and implications. The philosophical foundations that have sustained S.H.I.E.L.D. through its various transformations and challenges provide a framework for understanding the organization's continuing relevance and importance in an uncertain future. The commitment to protecting humanity from threats beyond conventional understanding remains as relevant today as it was during the organization's founding, while the methods and capabilities required to fulfill that mission continue to evolve in response to changing circumstances and emerging challenges. And so our journey through the classified chronicles of S.H.I.E.L.D. draws to a close, though the organization's vigilant watch continues in the shadows and in the light. From the desperate days of World War II to the cosmic challenges of the modern age, S.H.I.E.L.D. has evolved, fallen, and risen again, always adapting to new threats while holding fast to its core mission of protecting humanity. The agents who walk these halls, past and present, represent the best of human courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. They stand as sentinels between our world and the impossible, between the known and the unknowable, between hope and despair. Their stories remind us that even in a universe filled with gods and monsters, with cosmic forces and interdimensional threats, it is ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things that make the difference. As you drift towards sleep, let yourself dream not of the dangers that S.H.I.E.L.D. faces, but of the hope they represent, the idea that no threat is too great, no challenge too impossible, when people of courage and conviction stand together. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the shadows, Earth's guardians maintain their eternal vigil, ensuring tomorrow's dawn will come. The S.H.I.E.L.D. endures, and with it, our future.